Are you doing the wrong leg press and not getting muscle in the exact part of your legs that you want? So we're comparing the 45-degree leg press, a hip press, and a squat press. And you'll learn when to use each one, which one's right for you, and how to set it up to get the most growth possible. Let's jump in. The 45-degree or 40-degree linear leg press is one of the best tools you can use for overall leg development. Being that the hips are fixed,
you're not going to have a lot of hip flexion moving behind the line of force like you would doing something like a squat or an RDL.
And that's what we're going to focus on setting this one up. So to get the most quad out of this, we want to move our feet as low as you possibly can on the platform to where at the bottom of this leg press position, your heels are not lifting up. Now, if they are, there are some workarounds that you can do to gain more of that ankle range of motion, like using a heel elevated squat shoe, or even use some type of block on your leg press to gain that extra ankle range of motion. Now, another mistake that you can see is when people come down to, they max out their hips, and to gain more range of motion, they go into a posterior hip tilt, which starts curving the lower part of the back. Now, if you're moving the back during this, you're gaining that range from the spine, which is what we don't want to be moving during our leg press. So that should be the limit for your depth on your leg press. Now, if you're taller or just don't have a lot of range at your hip, you can turn your toes out a little bit to more of a frog stance, open your hips up, and gain more range of motion to get down. The thing about this is it will bring more adductors in, but you get more range of knee flexion too. So you can get more development out of your quads, and if you need adductors, well, makes more quad width as well. So it's still a very viable stance to utilize for this. So key thing is feet low, turn them out if you need more range, and the goal here is get your calves to touch your hamstrings. An adjustment you can make in some of these leg presses, if your foot plate is a lot higher up than your hips, you might see that you end up curving at the lower back more so. What you can do is put a pad under your butt to raise your torso up to better align the line of force through the foot into the hip. Now, some people do want to make this more glute, so if you do put your foot higher and in that bottom position, you have a 90-degree shin angle with the platform, this absolutely be more glute focused. However, since the hip is starting already in a lot of flexion to begin with, you're not have a lot of range of motion. There's a lot better movements that you can pick to build the quads. So that's not why I would make a 45-degree leg press, trying to turn it into a glute movement. Now, if you're one that struggles with ankle range of motion, getting a lot of knee flexion, let's move toward next leg press, which will be the best setup for you. The Cybex squat press is one of the best leg presses to create a quad bias squat. This definitely has an advantage if you're a tall guy and you have long femurs, or if you're feel like you're maxing out at the hip on a linear leg press without getting a lot of knee flexion. This one has a great advantage because it's coming straight down at you, but also shifting and moving down towards the ground at the same time. So in that very bottom position, it'll nearly look like a leg extension out of the bottom. So you get a lot of knee range of motion out of this with a little less hip. The negative to this one is that it requires a lot of ankle range of motion. So if that's your limitation, this one could hold you back. But again, we talked about using a squat shoe, or even they have magnetic blocks that can create heel elevation on the platform. That would be your big advantage to make this one work for you. This one is quad focused, so make sure you still use all the same cues as our linear leg press of keeping your feet low on the platform as you can, slightly turning out the feet if you need to gain that extra hip range of motion. One last thing on this one to consider is the resistance curve changes a little bit. Since the load starts heavy at the top, and as you come down, it shifts under the pivot point, which means it gets lighter at the bottom. It's an advantage if you are struggling with any type of a hip injury that is limiting your loading in that full stretch position. Also, it requires a lot out of the knee too. So if you have any knee issues, that could be the problem for you. But the next leg press we talked about, it's going to be the workaround for if you're struggling with nagging injuries, or if you have poor range of motion at the ankle and the hip. This will be your next best workaround for all of that. The hip press, which the one we're at today is a Rogers hip press, but also there's a hammer strength hip press, there's a Jim Lako hip press. Anything where it's on a pendulum is the one that we're focusing on. It's going to be the most joint friendly option, as it is going to swing towards you and also up.
So it does create a lot of hip flexion right at the start of the movement.
It doesn't require as much ankle range of motion, and since it does swing in this pendulum, it doesn't create as much forward knee travel as some of the other leg presses, so it can just be a bit more forgiving if you're running into knee pain. However, it does shift, just like the name implies, a hip press to being a little bit more glute focused. So for my wellness wellness ladies out there or guys that just want a big booty, this would be the better leg press of choice if you do want to focus on more of building up the hips. However, it's still absolutely going to work the quads. If you do want more quad focus, put your feet still low on the platform. It's even okay if your heel is hanging off the ledge, as some of these platforms are just built up a little bit higher. Now, if you do want more glute, what I would focus on when you're deep in that bottom position, that the shin angle is meeting 90 degrees with the platform. Something that you might notice in this one is that when you get into that deep hip flexion position, it really wants to post your hips more than any other leg press, not because that pendulum will want to start rolling you up. To troubleshoot this, start scooting your seat forward more. This will prevent that roll up from the pendulum happening as soon. The other workaround, if you're still noticing it, is sit on blocks. That'll raise the hips up so that line of force hits you more directly in the hip joint rather than hitting you in that lower back where it's wanting to cause a lot of that moment arm to occur and shift you into posterior hip tilt. Resistance profile wise, this one is a little bit more forgiving in the bottom position too, just like the Cybex, as the load drops off in the bottom, but challenges you a lot towards the top. Neither is wrong here. They both create a lot of great resistance throughout the full range. More so here is just picking the leg press that you're going to be able to target the muscle you intend and be able to sustain your training and not get injured with. These are your three main leg presses you're going to come across. Their linear leg press will be the most balanced for overall growth. Your Cybex squat press, more quad-based, and a hip press, more hip-based for glute. So which is the right one? Well, it really depends on you. Your ability to move and fit into that leg press, is it train the right intended muscle group, and also your joint tolerability and what you can sustain in your training. If you want this full leg press breakdown, the link below is in our free guide. Subscribe for our next exercise breakdown, and I'll see you in the next one.
Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things until I'm fucking buried in my grave.